I'm your host on Inside Vietnam.
This is a fantastic market because of the strength of the population.
You have to Vietnamize your content here.
I would tell them to come on board, tell them what they like, or give them what they like.
Vietnam is a very, very dynamic and exciting market.
A very warm welcome back to the show. My name is Phi Nguyen and I'm your host on Inside Vietnam. It's been 4 years since Vietnam's accession to WTO, and the international investment community has commented that the honeymoon period is over. Vietnam now needs to build a solid foundation in various areas, especially its macroeconomic factors, to remain competitive as an attractive investment destination in the region. Today, we're going to explore the perspectives of the European Union towards Vietnam as a foreign investment destination and at the same time as a sourcing destination in various manufacturing sectors. We will also discuss one of the key concerns from the international investment community for Vietnam, investment licensing. An issue, if addressed properly, could potentially create significant increase in the inflow of FDI into Vietnam. Let us welcome Mr. Alain Cani, President of the European Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, to the show. Greetings to you, Alan, and thank you very much for being on the show today on Inside Vietnam. First of all, my question would be, I understand that Eurojam is basically promoting trade and investment of the EU business community in Vietnam. So just to give the audience a bit of perspective on how important the EU is in the Vietnamese economy, could you just give us some sort of overview in terms of FDI ranking of the EU business community in Vietnam?
Sure. First, the Eurojam is a business association, is a chamber of commerce, of course, which is representing all European businesses doing business in Vietnam. We have about 800 members now, and also a few Vietnamese companies which are doing business with Europe and with European companies. In terms of FDI, I think for the last maybe 10 years, and that's true for this year, Europe and the EU, what we call the EU 27, the 27 countries of the European Union, represent the second largest partner of Vietnam in terms of investment.
The second largest for the last 10 years.
For the last 10 years, and this is true in 2010 as well. Very consistent. Sometime number one is Japan. Let's say as a whole, I think this year the number one FDI partner should be ASEAN.
So let's say in the last 10 years, what sort of growth rate do you see in the EU business investment in Vietnam?
Up and down.
Up and down.
They have been very, very successful year. They have been more difficult year. I think in the last 2-3 years, due to the global crisis, it went down a little bit. 2010 have seen a recovery, which is good news. We hope, and we are expecting 2011 to be pretty good. I think in terms of commitment for investment last year, we are talking about something which is over $2.5 billion, which is, I think the number two, and a significant figure.
And that's registered, or is that realized capital?
This is registered capital.
Yeah.
But the gap between registered and realized is not so big these days. But European usually, when they commit capital, they do realize it very quickly, unless they are facing issues with licensing, which we may talk later on. So the 2.5 billion we are talking about should be pretty close to
realized capital. Oh, that's great. You talked about EU 27, the 27 countries of EU. Can you just give us a perspective on which countries in the EU community are the top investors in Vietnam at the moment?
Yeah, of course, not the 27 countries are active in Vietnam. Of course, the most active countries historically, and it's still true today, are countries like Germany, France, and the UK. We see the emergence, very strong emergence of countries like Spain, Italy, becoming very, very active and serious investors in the country.
What do you think happens that create that sort of interest from Spain and Italy into Vietnam?
Spain, I think it's a change in their strategy. They used to look at West only. They used to look at South America. And they, for the last, I think, 10 years, they were looking first at China. And after China, they start looking at some other countries in the region. And I think it makes sense because, again, Vietnam has a very high level of attractiveness. The Eastern Bloc, which used to have a very long-term partnership with Vietnam, big countries like Hungary or Czechia, so we see them becoming more active as well. Of course, Holland, Netherlands, is also a big player. They have some big companies headquartered in Holland, like Unilever, whatever, or Shell.
So I would say that these various countries would be very specific in their sectors of investment into Vietnam, right? Because the Germany or France or Holland will have very different interests in terms of economic sectors here.
Yeah, well, let's say it's manufacturing.
Mainly manufacturing.
Yeah, manufacturing is a big size of European investment in the country. Beside probably service, especially service industry, which include finance, where Europeans are very strong, mostly probably from the UK or France. German are more on the manufacturing side and heavy industry. Italy are more eventually on service, light industry, but some machinery as well for ceramics. Spain, very much on service.
So would you say that there will be a continued growth from the EU business investment into Vietnam in the future?
Oh, sure,
That's
no doubt about it.
What would you say as in the growth rate from the EU for Vietnam?
First, I think it will depend very much on the situation on the EU itself. I don't believe that the crisis is over. I am very confident that we will have, let's say, I hope a double-digit type of growth.
A double-digit type of growth.
I believe maybe the beginning of this year with the macroeconomic issues we have with the currency, people may be a little bit more cautious for a few months.
At the moment, yes, macroeconomic factors are not very in favor of Vietnam at the moment.
Yeah.
Would you see that change in 2011? Or towards the end of 2011?
We always have high expectation. I am confident that over time this will be overcome. The fundamentals of Vietnam are still very strong and very good. I think Vietnam and Indonesia will be, for me, definitely, without any doubt, on the top 4 of the countries you should prioritize.
Top 4, so that's China, India, Vietnam, and Indonesia.
Okay.
How do you see Vietnam in comparison to Indonesia in terms of attractiveness?
For sure, Vietnam and Indonesia may compete very much because first they are both in ASEAN, and with this free trade coming by 2015 or 2018, depending on which product, when you want really to cover a region or a sub-region, you have to choose a country rather than another country. Indonesia has a big population, but I believe Vietnam has a lot of attractiveness as well in terms of quality of manpower and in terms of stability and everything. So I believe, it's a headache. It's probably a headache for most of the investors if they have really to select one country rather than 2.
Let's touch base on that and say, if I am an EU investor and I have to select one country to invest in out of Indonesia or Vietnam, what would be the top 3 conditions for them to look at before they actually make that decision?
I'm trying to answer your question, but it's not an easy one because you may have different. But first, I think political stability is the key. And I think for this, Vietnam is a champion. No doubt about it. 2, of course, is what are the business environment in the country. And I believe Vietnam and Indonesia are almost at par.
You're talking about the ease of doing business in a country.
Doing business. For sometime, let's say, for example, for getting a license, it's much easier in Indonesia. in terms of emerging market and in terms of attractiveness.
Yeah.
What I hear from the senior European businessmen I'm meeting time to time is that their favorite countries, which way they consider investment, and that's what we are talking about, is definitely, beside China, India, which are different type of animals because they are bigger, because Indonesia and Vietnam, luckily Vietnam is in the list, and I think it makes sense, are the most attractive one.
And
but of course,
currently,
Malaysia is a country to be considered as well.
Yeah.
Thailand, even they have some political issues. Economically, they do pretty well.
but in between Indonesia and Vietnam at the moment, in terms of EU investment inflow, FDI inflow into the countries, which one is higher?
I think in terms of existing investment, Indonesia is bigger.
Yeah.
In terms of flow of investment, it's more or less, probably slightly more in Indonesia than in Vietnam at the moment. But I believe the potential is more in Vietnam.
Why do you believe so?
It's the people. I believe the mentality and the structure of the population in Vietnam make this country definitely having more potential.
So it is the people that you bank on in Vietnam.
Yeah, I think this is the best asset of this country,
Of
is
this
the
country.
people.
Wow, okay.
Is the people. First of all, because they are young, also because of their willingness to work, on their willingness to learn. They have very high expectation for themselves, their ambition, their optimism. You know, Vietnam is the most optimistic country in the world.
Let's talk about the new areas of investment that the EU business community is interested in Vietnam. Is there anything, any new areas of investment that they are interested in?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure?
As you know, this is really one of the big issue in the country. It's a bottleneck. It is probably one of the reasons FDI is not growing faster. As soon as really a good PPP frame is in place, and it's very, very, very important that the government is working on it. And we have
PPP
seen,
is public-private partnership.
yeah,
isn't
sorry,
it?
yeah, that's what it means. The Europeans have been the champion of this private-public partnership. In the UK, when all the Margaret Thatcher has privatized most of the state-owned enterprises.
Yeah.
In France as well.
What are the challenges, though, for Vietnam in terms of using that PPP structure?
The legal frame is very important. Then they should have acceptable return. For example, at the moment, if you take project like transport, you know, metro line, Ho Chi Minh City is building a few metro lines, and PPP is being considered for this.
But do you think the legal frame for PPP projects in Vietnam is right at the moment for investors?
No, the government is working on a new frame.
What is it that's not right at the moment, and how are we going to improve it?
Because the legal frame is not right. They have some new laws which has improved things, but it's not sufficient. So what the government is doing, which is right, I think they are working on a couple of pilot cases.
Yeah.
And from this pilot case, they will make it really a new law or a new decree.
So there are pilot cases in place already. Which other projects do you remember?
They are not in place already. They are close to be in place. But I think they need probably another year.
Okay.
And let's say I am advising the government to accelerate the process, because this is not something which we can do today, but it's something we should be done as soon as possible. And the good news is that the government is really working hard on it.